Well, welcome back to Food for Thought, everyone. I'm bringing you this show with me, as always, is my co-host, Dylan Hartley.
101 fantasy football.
Is there anything else you want to share about your fantasy football season?
Scored 147 in one league and 165 non-PPR, 165 points in another league.
Wow, they might be building statues after you for too much longer.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as always, tune into the Mothership Show on Mondays, Knuckle Sandwich every Thursday, Fantasy 15 every Friday, Ducks in the Pond every Sunday. And this week we're going to be talking about a topic that I really like, and that's how to increase viewership in baseball. And so the first one that we'll start with, or the first topic we'll start with, is the automated strike zone. And this isn't one that I think too much on, but when you think on it though, when you do spend some time for it, there is more to it than meets the eye, I think. And I think growing up watching baseball, we just assume that the guy behind the plate is always going to be calling balls and strikes. But the thing is, we can sit on our couch and watch the game and know what a ball and strike is. You can watch on ESPN and Fox Sports. You can have a strike zone right there for you, and you can have guys blatantly miss. And, it doesn't take a genius to realize that the umpire did in fact miss. So I like the idea of having an automated strike zone just so we know that we get the call get every call right, rather. And the thing is, I do think there needs to be some objectivity to it, because when you look at basketball, the lane in basketball is a certain width, the court's a certain width, there's a length of the court. Same in football, yardage, there's lengths to every aspect of it, and it's objective, and I think there needs to be that same objectivity in baseball. Dylan?
See, I'm kind of on the fence on this. I'm leaning more towards against. I'm going to compare it to a couple sports. One's basketball, one's football, and then another one's soccer. Basketball and football, I think there's too much time coming out for like replays and all this. And that's because we're coming to more necessarily automated, but we're coming to more video review, and baseball's even brought in video review. And I'm all about, and this is why it comes to soccer, human error. And the soccer took out the human error of goals, and I think that's a big part of the sport. You look at baseball, and more often than not, umpires are consistent with their strike zones throughout a game. Not necessarily throughout the league, but throughout a game. If one ump's calling a ball a strike just on the inside corner that shouldn't be a strike, he's going to call it the whole game. And there's a few umpires that are inconsistent, and those usually I don't keep my eyes on umpires, but I don't ever see too much inconsistency throughout every single game, So I don't think the umpires are that inconsistent. It would be nice if every call was right, but then again, like the human error, I think bringing cheers in for strikes and boos in for balls that should have been strikes, I think that is kind of exciting sometimes, and I think also the excitement of an ump ringing up a player on a strike three on his call. I think that's exciting in MLB. So I'm more leaning against it, but it would be nice if every strike was right, and I could see how that could be a positive thing and help with viewership. But overall, I think the human error of automated strike zones, of umpire being behind the plate, I think that's big, and it's kind of fun, and that's kind of my take on it.
Well, here's the thing. I don't need some old blind bastard telling me what's a ball and what's a strike when I can clearly see it drinking a beer from my couch, And you talk about the cheering of the crowd and, their reaction to him calling a strike three or a ball four or a bad call or a good call, That, in football, they go back and review and they get the call right 9 times out of 10. And that home crowd will still boo, based on whether that call benefits the team or not. So I think that reaction is still there. My whole thing is I just want to get it right. I don't want anybody to be screwed. I don't want games to be decided because somebody called a ball when it should have been a strike, And I'll say this to kind of wrap up the topic. I guess I'll give you one more chance to rebuttal. But the only consistent thing about officiating is that they're inconsistent. So that's just kind of where I'll leave it at.
Yeah, but they're. I don't know. I kind of disagree with that. On one, you take the your reviews, and they're still gonna boo if it's called the opposite way, even though it's right. But
Right.
it's the fact that they have to go back and review. And I know but what do I got to do for an automated strike zone? Like, I mean, how the ump reacts instantly. The ump reacts instantly to what he thinks it is. If there's an automated strike zone, we're gonna take the time for something to get called down to the ump, or the ump have to look at it up on a, I think it, the huge, I don't know. It's just something about the automated strike zone. I feel like it's going to slow down the game. It's going to take away a few excitement. Like, you have to wait till a video or a video board, or we're watching it on a TV. You have to wait till something pops up or something rings into the ump to tell them it's a striker ball. And that could take a second or two after a pitch is, and I don't know. I just feel like that's going to take too much away from the game. I feel like.
I hear you, and we'll talk about pace of play and the length of games and stuff like that here in a second. The next topic we're going to discuss is lowering the mound and widening the strike zone. And I don't have the exact year, the numbers, and everything, but there was one year that Bob Gibson was extremely dominant. And the MLB came together and decided, look, we can't have that many guys striking out all the time. We can't have that few runs being scored. We're just going to lower the strike zone. And then, throughout the years, we're going to be lowering the mound, rather. But then, throughout the years, the strike zone's gotten smaller and smaller. You lower the mound to give the hitters an advantage with hitting the ball. And then, on top of that, you widen the strike zone. It gives, more, fairness or whatever the case may be in dealing with a lower mound for the pitchers, but then it also increases action. You're going to have more balls being hit, more bats being swung. So that's why I'm in favor of lowering the mound and widening the strike zone. So, Dylan?
I'm going to go first. I'm going to give some little stats on widening it. I'm against it. The batting averages this year, or so far this year, 248 and 255 last year.
Mm-hmm.
And the best ever was 1894 or 309 average, league average.
Oh my
and
God.
And the worst was at 237. And the worst was at 237. So the average of all the years is 260. So we're below the average of balls being hit with the strike zone we have right now and last year.
Mm-hmm.
And on lowering the mound, last year, home runs, there's the most home runs, I believe. I couldn't find the exact stat, but it was the most home runs ever hit by a league, in the whole season, by everybody in the league. So, like, again, if you widen the strike zone and our batting averages are below the mark of where they should be, but we're still hitting the most home runs ever, I don't think we should lower the mound or widen it, because if you're widening it, it's gonna make more strike zone or more batting averages go down. Batting averages are gonna dip even more, and we're already below the all-time average. And if you lower the mound and you make hitters more dominant, I know you have to do. I think you have to do both if you do it. But if you do both, it's like I don't know what's gonna happen with with all these stats that I'm looking at. And I mean, I guess you can't really tell until you see it. But again, it's just. I have two words to say for the whole low batting average and high home runs. You ready for those two words? Yeah.
Launch angle.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if you force hitters to swing and just put the ball in the bat because there's a bigger zone, you can help eliminate the launch angle as well. Do you agree?
That could. Well, yeah, I agree with that. That's kind of what I'm with you. I'm like, I think if you do one, you have to do the other. You can't make hitters more dominant because we're hitting so many home runs, and you can't just widen the strike zone because batting averages I feel like are just going to dip. So if you give a pitcher at the angle of the mound right now, who pitchers are pretty dominant. I mean, other than home runs, batting averages are 0.5 or 0.05 and 0.12 down from the league average in the last 2 years. If you give pitchers more opportunity to strike them out with a wider zone, then how far do you think those numbers are going to dip? And then on top of that, if you just lower the mound, how many home runs are already going to be hit versus last year being the all-time record?
I hear you.
If that makes sense.
No, I hear what you're saying there. That's why you lower the mound with it too, to give the hitters a better advantage with hitting the ball.
Yeah.
You widen it to make it more fair for the pitchers, but then at the same point, you force batters to kind of avoid that launch angle and really just focus on dropping your hands and putting the barrel of the bat on the ball. So that's why I like it there.
And that's kind of one little thing I want to touch on with that too is the way, if you guys haven't watched the Cardinals play lately, they're doing a lot.
Here we go, Cardinals homer.
Cardinals, I gotta throw my Cardinals in there. They're playing a lot of hit and run baseball, stealing the bases, and it's making the games exciting that way. I think that if you do both of that, you're gonna see more tactical baseball, like bunting people over and runs being scored other ways than home runs, which can be exciting too. So I think you have to do both of them if you do it.
And I want to hit on one point too. I like what you said there. I'm going to hit on one point. We'll move on to our next topic here with it. But you talked about having the automated strike zone and how it could potentially delay the game and increase the game overall length, I guess. And the thing is, the reason that you lower the mound and you widen the strike zone is to increase action of the game, not so much the pace or length of the game. College football games and NFL games are going on longer than ever, and people are tuning into those just fine. And that's what leads me to think that it's really an action in the game that needs to be addressed, not so much the length of it. And I think, we'll talk about this later, but I think the number of mound visits, and then also the time, I guess the shot clock you want to call it, that you can have for a mound visit. So I know you're going to get into that later. So let's go ahead and move on to the shifts. And the shifts in baseball is something that's being discussed right now, and the baseball purists, I mean, I'm sure they've hated my opinion so far in this show, and they might hate it again a little more here. With the shifts, they talk about making it illegal so guys can pull the ball and hit the ball like they want. And part of me says, learn how to hit the ball to the opposite field, become better at playing baseball, hit it whether or not, But then a part of me thinks, in football, you have the line of scrimmage. And in football, you can't cross that line of scrimmage until the center snaps the ball and the play begins. And then in basketball, you have the half-court line. You can't go, once you pass the ball into the front court, you can't go back into the back court as an offensive player. And also, you can't, go out of bounds as a basketball player. You can't stand in the paint for more than 3 seconds on offense or defense. So saying that, shifts are illegal and that you can't move a third baseman or a shortstop on the other side of second base, or vice versa for your first and second baseman, that doesn't sound too radical to me. There are rules in other sports that dictate where players can stand before the play is started, or even during the play itself. So the idea of making shifts illegal to me, it's not a radical idea, and I could see it helping the game. Dylan, tell me your thoughts.
I think I'm all about defense, and the most exciting game to me, for baseball, let's put baseball, is the playoffs. Whenever pitchers are out there grinding, defenses are turning to, you have the best of the best out there. It's a defensive game. It's a 3-2 going to the 9th inning. Those games are exciting to me. I think on defense, you should be able to do whatever you got to do to stop an offense. I think it's just that simple. I don't really have anything else to say about that. Like, if you want to put 5 outfielders in the outfield because a guy hits the ball in the outfield 9 times out of 10, put 5 guys out in the outfield. Do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do what you got to do to stop an offense. And if you sit there and Matt Carpenter's going to be my example, because I'm watched Matt Carpenter bat. They have
here we go.
Yep, 3 guys on the right side of the infield, but he doesn't not hit the ball to the left or left field. Like, you shouldn't punish the defense for trying to stop that.
Right.
You got to do what you got to do to stop an offensive player. You're basically saying, hey, you can't go guard this. It's like, hey, LeBron James is really good, but you can't double team LeBron James. That's how I feel about it.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, there are examples of where players are allowed to stand before the play starts, and then even during the play, and then that happens in both football and basketball. I just think, I hear both sides of it, I really do. But just saying, making shifts illegal, not letting a guy move on this side or that side of second base before the play starts, it's not that crazy to me, I mean, it happens in other sports. I can see it happening in baseball, or I could see somebody wanting it to happen in baseball. I doubt that ever does happen. But, yeah, let's go ahead and move on to player branding then. And Dylan, I'll let you go ahead and start off on this one. Let's talk about facial recognition and kind of where baseball might be failing in that to some extent.
Oh yeah, baseball kind of, you look at it on terms of NFL and NBA, and I see less baseball than I do NFL. And we talked about how the NFL last show, is kind of down on that. We
Right.
don't get to see the players' faces. Well, the only time I can remember seeing a baseball player, not the only time, but 9 times out of 10, the only time, it's just a big majority of times on Wheaties boxes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I think of when I think of baseball recognition. I don't recall seeing too many commercials on baseball players. And when you do, I can't even think of any off the top of my head. I think baseball is lacking in this. But then again, what you think about this too is they're on the road, they're traveling, they're playing 162 games in a year, plus playoffs. They don't have time for commercials or going and putting their faces out there, unless it's the off season. And really, there's not much off season because you got the winter, and then you're in spring training. Early March, late March, early April.
Yeah.
So I think they're lacking in the area, but I also think that it's hard for them to get there.
Right. I just want to say one quick thing about player branding and the facial recognition in baseball. Growing up, I was a big Cardinal fan, and I was a huge fan of Mark McGwire. And the thing is, my dad and Mark McGwire had the same Fu Manchu. And as a kid, one time, I'm like, Dad, are you sure you're not Mark McGwire? And that just shows you the lack of facial recognition. I mean, he was a player that I loved. He was one of my favorite players. And I was like, is he my dad? Is he not? But, facial recognition, other than the commercials, man, I think it's really just a flaw in the game itself, You look at a game like basketball, LeBron James, he could get a rebound on a play, he could dribble it up the court on that same play, and then he could shoot it, or get an assist on that play. And so you're really seeing him do 3 things with the basketball in one play. Then in baseball, you might see a guy bat 3 times all game. And then on top of that, you might see 2 balls hit his way the whole game. So that's a total of 5 times you're seeing a guy do something that's related to the game of baseball in one game. So I think honestly that might just be a flaw within the game itself that's not very easy to fix.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And, it's kind of, I think we talked about shield. This is kind of back to what I was touching, but you're totally right. You see players' faces. I mean, a total, the max, I would say 10 times a game, and that's a max.
Yeah.
And that's playing a position, maybe even the infield, where they get a little more action.
Right.
It's just, we talked about the NFL being a shield-driven league and the NBA being a star-driven league, and I think the MLB is kind of in between. You don't we don't have players that we compare to be the greatest of all time, like LeBron and Michael. We don't really. I think that's why the NBA gets so much recognition is, how much you can look at somebody individually. And I think baseball and the NFL are more of a team oriented. You see more of a team. You don't see their faces as much too.
Right. It's all about we, not so much me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's go ahead and build on player usage. Let's take it right to personal expression. When I think of personal expression in the MLB, I don't really think of anything. I think of, a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, maybe falling asleep watching an afternoon game in baseball. But really, I think to make it more exciting is bat flips and then celebrations, for walk-offs, double plays, into-inning kind of stuff. I really like watching that kind of stuff. And I have a lot of friends who are from South America, Central America, where baseball is huge, and they talk about games there, and you go back and watch them, it's like a freaking party. You got people dancing on the dugouts, you got people celebrating home runs, huge bat flips, and I think a player who really embodies that, is Yasiel Puig, or maybe Jose Bautista to some extent when he was good. I think stuff like that is pivotal for drawing in, younger generation, your average fans, because your baseball purists are going to watch no matter if they get pissed off or not, or whether they think something is too eccentric or not, so you're going to see your baseball homers really tune in, and I think the younger generation average fan would tune in more if there were more excitement. I think that's one way to build on it. Tell me what you think.
Well, one person I think of for personal expression is Sammy Sosa and his
oh my God. Yeah, he'd jump all the way to second base sometimes, you'd think.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely for it. I love watching a celebration. It's these sports that these athletes play are hard. And they're playing against the best of the best of the best here. And, if someone wants to bat flip a home run, it's more them being excited for making a big play or then I think you're for it. And I know the MLB is a little harder to do that because other opposing players get so pissed off and fights happen, fights break out, they throw at the next batter and stuff like that. And I love that too. I love, like, if one guy deserves to get hit, I mean, don't throw it at his head, but hit him, beam him in the back, beam him in the ribs. Show that emotion. I think the emotion is good for all sports. I'm for the touchdown celebrations, even though they do kind of get out of hand sometime. And I'm for the bat flips. I'm for the Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa hops to third base, and it's exciting. It's exciting. It does make the sport more exciting.
I agree. The only thing I differ with you on is like the throwing at players. I don't like that. You can see pitches get away from you, hit guys too high. Hit them in places they shouldn't, and if you were going to do something like that, I mean, in real life, like, you would be fighting, people would call that assault, so, and you're really messing with people's health in general, so.
Well, I'm not for, there's a
No, I hear what you're saying. Like, just, like, drop a dude in the back real quick or something like that, but not.
Yeah, or not even, just make sure you're throwing just like an 85 to 90 mile an hour fastball. I mean, the professional pitchers, they shouldn't. I mean, some shit does happen, and they do throw too high and stuff. But I think that emotion, like, just the emotion in the game and baseball, is the best because if this dude is like, I don't know, they're gonna throw it. They're gonna throw at a dude that pisses them off, and I do like it to an extent. I'm not saying hit somebody and knock somebody's lights out, but throw an 85 mile an hour fastball and hit somebody in the back, like they deserve it.
The real reason I don't like that, though, is because, let's say a guy hits a huge home run, flips his bat 10 feet in the air, and then does a Sammy Sosa halfway to first, Somebody's going to get hit. It's just a given. Somebody's going to get hit. But the thing is, let's say a pitcher strikes out, the third batter to retire the inning and the bases were loaded, and it was a crucial spot in the game, and he celebrates on his way to the dugout. No player can do anything to him. No batter can do anything to him, So that's... Go ahead.
Yeah, but I get that 100%.
So that's why I'm really against pitchers being able to throw at batters, because there's no way for a hitter to really retaliate against a pitcher that celebrates,
Yeah, well, and I do understand that, but like the Batista bat flip where he threw the bat as far as he could, some of those some celebrations I feel like are more excessive than the others, and that's kind of where they're at. But like when a pitcher, we see a pitcher strike out. Though I've seen one pitcher I could think of get carried away where he's like dancing on the way to the dugout. But the pitchers usually just scream, and they're kind of just like in that intense moment. I've not really seen too much of a celebration where a pitcher deserves to get hit on the way, his next at bat. You know what I'm saying?
I guess, yeah. I mean, it could just be a lack of seeing it too. But let's go ahead and take it to our last topic, something that you kind of feel pretty passionate about, and that's the direction of the league and where it's going. Let's hear what you think.
I think the league is in the right direction. And by that I'm saying, like, I think it's doing its best to increase the fan viewership. They're doing the best to make the game more exciting. Mm-hmm. They're doing the best to get every call right. They have a set number of mound visits and like a little clock going on that. So they're trying to speed the game up. But like you said earlier, and I totally agree with you, there needs to be more action in baseball. It's kind of getting to hey, this guy's going to strike out or hit a home run. Nothing's going on between the base paths. Some teams are doing it, some teams aren't. And I think those teams that are doing it are the teams winning. Like, there's teams that are out there that are doing the fundamentals right, and they're scoring all these runs, and they're going to the World Series, and they have really good pitching, and they have really good base running, good defense. But the league in general, I think it's kind of like a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. But I think right now we're going up on the roller coaster. We're going up, and we're building up, and it's getting better and better and better. But we've had, in the last 5 years, I'd say a couple of down years where we've been at the low points of baseball. And right now with the way it's looking, I think with the home runs being jacked up, we're having pitchers, certain pitchers coming out. We're seeing a lot of no-hitters or almost no-hitters and almost perfect games. I think baseball's back going in the right direction, and it's getting more fun to watch, and I'm watching more baseball games outside of even watching the Cardinals than I've ever had before.
I think I might be in the same boat as you, maybe not exactly, but somewhere along those lines. As a kid, I would watch like HGTV and TLC and stuff like that with my mom, because I would always sit in the living room and my mom would be watching TV, and they would look at kitchens where the kitchen connects to the living room, and there would be a wall, and they're like, if you knock that wall down and put an island out there and make this whole room open, that would make it look really nice. And people are like, yeah, let's do that, and they fix the home up and sell it for way more money doing it that way. I feel like that's the direction the MLB kind of needs to go. They need to reassess the whole layout of what they're doing and construct it to what's new and what's needed. And I feel like they're kind of looking at that room in this analogy. The MLB is looking at that room, and instead of saying, let's knock that wall down, make it open, and put an island there, or something like that, they're saying, let's just put new floors in, or let's just put new cabinets in. Like, they could be doing a lot more. They're trying to make the situation better, but they could be doing a lot more to help.
Yep, and I do agree with that, but you also got to look at they're doing things to help. They're doing things to help the game. Maybe, it's a Philadelphia 76 trust the process moment. Like they're kind of assessing some situations, and then boom, it's going to hit all at once. Like something's going to happen. That's kind of, I agree with you. Let's knock the floor out. Let's get this right. Let's get it going. But again, baseball, I don't see too much wrong with baseball, and I see it on the rise. You don't want to knock the whole wall out and it not work out,
Mm-hmm.
And then
I hear you.
And then you have to go back and do baby steps a different way. So right now, I think they're getting it right with their baby steps. But I do agree that they need to knock the whole wall out, and they need to sell it for as much as they can. Like what you're saying. I do agree that needs to happen at some point.
Okay. Well, before we wrap this show up, Dylan, is there anything else you want to add before we wind down? I guess.
I'm enjoying these shows, and I'm hoping you guys are too, and come out. Like I said, I say this every week. I'm gonna say it again. Tweet us what you think. Tweet us your opinion on anything. If you have any questions, or if you want to hear something, just tweet it out to us, or do what you gotta do.
Absolutely, and as always, like I said before, tune into the show on Monday. Knuckle Sandwich every Thursday, Fantasy 15 every Friday. I know I definitely make sure to tune into the fantasy one. And then Ducks on the Pond every Sunday. And as always, stay saucy.